Hi, everybody. This is Replenish Earth Live. I'm Tia Kansara. We are living in unprecedented times of change and opportunity. And together we can create a new generation of leadership for a better tomorrow. These are the words of Futur IO, and an organization that really has at its heart some of the most incredible programs, executive programs, which are incredibly ideal right now for professionals who want and are thinking about changing and transforming their mindsets to enable them to strategize for the future. It's really about knowing where these sorts of exponential technologies can disrupt change that we're already experiencing today, that can impact us in ways that can almost sort of seed into every industry, a sort of evolution of sorts that can help in the development and step shifting for pandemic proofing our businesses. And I feel that this organization, Futur IO, is amongst one of the most sort of forerunners for this work. I want to introduce to you Harold. Harold is the curator and the CEO of Futur IO Institute. He's incredibly passionate about technology and future exponential technologies in particular, and their opportunities for society, for brands, for entrepreneurs, especially in Europe. He is the chief sort of author of exponential technologies, especially moonshots for Europe, which he presented at Davos. It was absolutely successful. And I'm going to invite first Harold and then more of the faculty onto our live today. So without further ado, welcome Harold, welcome Futur IO. Good morning. This is so exciting to learn more about Futur IO and also the faculty. We do have some faculty backstage who will be joining us as well. Harold, tell us a little bit about the masterclass that you're going to be launching.
Oh yeah, that's an exciting chapter because we all had to, I think, rethink where we are. We had to reposition ourselves, do a big reset, all the RE, whatever, reinvent, and so on. During this, let's say, summer of 2000. There's a song, Summer of 69. That sounds more, fantastic than Summer of 2020. But I mean, this obviously is, how do you want to say, a big test of all of us, whether we are personal, whether you're running organizations or teams or communities. So we have, as you know, we have running executive programs in fantastic locations and with really amazing partners like H-Farm in Venice or the camp in Aix-en-Provence. And our mission is to bring a European network of forward-thinking leaders together to explore the disruption of exponential technologies, but even more so, how can we apply the knowledge and the insights of those into co-creating desirable futures? So that's really important, that we're not only about the tech part, but really more, okay, how do we apply this to the grand challenges like the SDGs? So now there's no stage, right? I mean, there's no location we can go to, there's no convening in ways that we have experienced in the past and try to make it a very much, let's say, immersive experience. So now our challenge was, what do we do from here? And so we created this masterclass for Moonshot Thinking as a first step into building basically an online academy with certifications and building futurists and so on. And I'm just privileged to have amazing faculty around our institute who help bring this to life. And I'm a curator, so I'm just like watching in first line, bringing people together and learning from all of them. And so I'm happy that we have a couple of faculty here with us, and I don't want to talk too much. So masterclass is, why don't I show you maybe a little trailer? Can we do that? Just
please.
Glimpse to get us into the mood. It also has some music for people who still get coffee at this time or so. So let me see if I can share my screen and then take you to this window. And if, what? No, not that one. That's a surprise. So wait, change again. technology in the morning, who can master that. So here's that one.
Brilliant.
All right. Are we live?
So we're going to share.
Okay.
We're going to share the video right now. We'll be right back shortly.
All right. It's just a minute and 60 seconds, basically, of some inspiration of where we are right now.
Reset complete.
I remember I had my first complaint from a character development.
Yeah, so that was just a little glimpse for me, but look who's here.
Ah! Feels like a blind date, you know. And there arrived the faculty of the Futur IO Masterclass. Welcome, Max Giordano and Gerard Belschinger. What an absolute pleasure to have both of you. Gerard is the rector of the Salzburg University of Applied Sciences since 2015. And he's also, I mean, he's got an incredible CV, but one of the ones that I think is, you know, so exciting is is his role as the vice director of the Media Museum and head of the Media Lab at Zentrum für Kunst und Medientechnologie Karlsruhe. I obviously didn't say that correctly, but I thought it would be really interesting and fun for you to see me squirm. Welcome. And Max is probably one of the most exciting humans, because I remember in this live session that we had, he sort of like, the door opened behind him and he sort of like walked through whilst he was still on screen and sort of like just sat right behind himself, of course, in a video as a Zoom background, and completely and utterly scared us out of our chairs. By way of introduction. Welcome both of you.
Hello. I'm jealous on the background of Gerhard. Where are you sitting right now?
I'm sitting. It's actually not. It's not a virtual background, but it's real.
Not. Oh, it's real. Oh no, he's got one of those.
That really looked real.
It's real. It's Schloss Leopoldskron in Salzburg, and it's, to be honest about it, it's not my home. But I'm at a small conference, Sonophilia, which takes place here.
Very cool. So this is what happens
to hear that conferences are back.
Yeah.
So tell us, team, you know, this is such an interesting opportunity to bring together the faculty of Futur IO into what is effectively preparation for us in terms of moonshot thinking. I mean, moonshots previous to pandemic and moonshots post-pandemic are slightly different. You know, moonshots pre-pandemic, with, you know, despite all of the risks and the aspects of the risk registers telling us that pandemics were going to be happening. I'm sure some of you actually already picked that up. What was it really now that inspired the masterclass? Because, you know, Harold, it's such a great opportunity to bring different people together, like Gerard and like Max, Pablo, you know, Roxy, all of these incredible faculty who have been doing a lot of work in this field, and you've focused it on the climate as well. So I'm keen to hear some of your thoughts, faculty, on you know, the timing of the masterclass, why it's important, to have it, especially on the climate, what's happening right now, especially considering we're coming to the end of Climate Week as well. So yes, over to you.
I mean, I can share some thinking from my background. Independent now from the pandemic or from the masterclass, just reflecting on moonshots. Like, my experience in innovation management is that with the years, with exponential developments, with exponential technologies, like with every year that we saw the progress happening in, big data, AI, whatever is happening out there, technology is getting cheaper, more available, etc. For us in innovation management, it became increasingly hard to imagine what's in 5 years from now. As a matter of fact, I don't even know if Gerhard remembers, but I met him, in Zurich when you've been involved probably in one of the worldwide first mobile-centric studies. And that was pre-iPhone. I mean, people tend to forget there was a whole decade of innovation before the iPhone came along. But my point is, with each year, it became more and more clear that, wow, what's happening there? This leads to that, and this is a catalyst to each other. And then something like the iPhone comes, and then you have app developers, and then something like Candy Crush comes, and then bandwidth comes, and flat rate, etc. So who of us would be in a position to describe, yeah, this is the iPhone in 2025 going to look like? And so to cut the long story short, why we became so excited about moonshot thinking was like that we simply understood, like, damn, there is no way I, as Max, could describe the iPhone 20, the version 20 in the year 2030. I mean, what is it? Is it a contact lens? Is it Neuralink? Is it a chip in my brain? Is it like an earpiece and some hologram? I mean, who knows? And so instead of describing like, a gut feeling like, yeah, this is where technology will lead us to, what I love about it is like to do it the other way around. Like, with a moonshot, you basically describe like what is a desirable future for you. I mean, what do you want from an iPhone in the year 2030? And so that's why, we got so excited about this whole, like, wait a second, let's really start and creating like methodologies, frameworks to help people to come to a vision like, hey, what's my desirable future on 2030? What is it that I actually want to see taking place? And then move backwards. If this is literally what I want to do in 2030, what can I do now in order to achieve that? But to cut a long story short, I mean, I just want to give you my personal background why I've been so excited, because I've seen it now with a variety of industries happening, whether it's the media company, whether it's pharmaceuticals, whether it's the automotive industries, whether, any sort of industry, you can have an opinion on what you actually want to see happening in 10 years from now, in 15 years from now. And rather work backwards, like this is the future that I want, than the opposite direction where you're like, with AI and then with data security and privacy, I end up in 2 years with this and that. Hopefully that made some sense what I was giving as a background, but
yeah, it's sort of like getting the bigger picture, and as you said, instead of like being subject to it, how about we sort of introduce ourselves into that space, allowing ourselves to actually give that direction ourselves instead of just being receptive, right? Like, what do you think, Harry?
Well, yes, first of all, Max, certainly I remember those days in Zurich where we worked together on the future of communication, because I was the founder of this degree program. Now I think talking about moonshots, it's not necessarily what we have been discussing for the last 2.5 decades, as far as I'm concerned, because I think, and also reflecting those climate issues right now, I think we are in a very decisive moment of Earth's history, because we have now for the first time again the chance to leave behind what we should be called the oil era, And Max, I very much like the background that you have, those trees that you have as a picture on your wall. I think we really have to step into the post-oil era. And we're doing a lot of research here in Salzburg and worldwide for replacing materials that we know with materials that we perhaps still not know, but the materials that are biodegradable and will lead to less pollution. And this is something that is, I think, very decisive. And this is one of the big challenges that I think is the real moonshot of the next decade.
Mm-hmm. And just to build on that, because I just gave my personal background coming from, you know, these past years, but being in the present, like 2020, and Tia, you already mentioned, you know, this year the decade started differently than we all thought. And you probably all have seen this meme where it says, who is the most successful CDO? Is it the CIO, the CTO, or is it COVID? And yeah, the answer is COVID. So we're currently seeing progress been done in 5 months that would have taken 5 years. Imagine contactless payments, imagine, you know, like all these virtual format, what we do right now. I mean, how many companies said, hey, remote work, it doesn't work for us. You know, we're XYZ, we need to be in the office. And now within 5 months, we've seen all this progress. But on a more serious note, and to build on what Gerhard said, yeah, it's absolutely this whole thing. When I've mentioned exponential technologies, they lead us to an unknown future. We just seen what's happening with something around COVID, an unknown future, something we haven't dreamt about a year ago. And we're literally 2 things. One is like, it's just got further accelerated. It showed how connected we are as a species, as a planet. It showed how the world can come to a stop. And second, it pushed far behind like 2 things, and that is like the upcoming economic challenges. I mean, I want to stay optimistic, and I don't want to call it you know, the upcoming crisis, but there definitely are challenges around automotive, around, you know, you know, all these industries, retail industries. We've seen this massive push to online platforms, etc. But finally, what Gerhard said, absolutely, because of the pandemic, it seems almost that Greta and Fridays for Futures, and, you know, my favorite example, the shareholder letter from Larry Fink from BlackRock to the CEOs. I mean, we're talking about a company, not hippy dippy stuff, you know, not like, hey, let's talk about climate. I mean, we're talking about a company with over $7 trillion in assets. And if this company says like, hey, climate risk is an investment risk, this is for real, climate change is happening, we're running out of time, dear CEO, listen to that. And all of this has been pushed, you know, a bit afar because of the more imminent crisis, because you know what I mean. So for us, it's very, very exciting times, because everything got accelerated, and now we need to act, and, you know, we have to work on solutions that are possible in 10 years, and we need to start them.
That's incredible. I think one thing that, you know, definitely I'm taking away is climate risks is an investment risk. Many of these risks that we haven't associated to the climate. I mean, if you remove all of the resources that you need to build the products that you have for your present company, your future companies, then you're not going to have a business. And so, you know, the underpinning of your business is the access to the resources that we have been using, not in a depletive way, but in a way that is replenishing Earth. So how can you see that, you know, on the one hand, you've got the, you know, there are going to be more large scale unknown situations. Pandemic has been one example, but we can almost be prepared that there will be even bigger large scale, you know, situations that we may never have even had on the risk register for any country. How do we prepare for the eventuality of these large-scale risks that are going to be occurring, and how can we be ready? So what are some of the areas, I suppose, that would be helpful for us to explore?
Yeah, first of all, I would really like to not focus on the risks, because I think
Sure.
the crisis is always a time of opportunities. And what I think is that we experience a moment where the mindset really undergoes a change, where we see that we are in an open situation where we can decide how our future should look like. And therefore, I mean, we had an IPO in Germany last week of a company that produces weapons, and everybody who talked about that said, well, basically we don't want to have investments like that anymore. So we have the opportunity to decide what our future should be, and I think it's our task to give to tell young people that they have exactly these possibilities. And I think the masterclass is a great opportunity to really express our feeling about a desirable future. And therefore it's so important that we find ways of communication, even though we have no opportunity to meet in person.
But Gerhard, this might be a good segue. Why don't you talk a little bit about your personal moonshot in creating a new university for this next generation?
Yeah, true. Next year, start a new university in Berlin. It's called Berlin School of Sustainable Futures. And we do that in close cooperation with Harald and Future.io. And this institution is founded due to the fact that we will need a lot of decision makers of the future that know about the facts, that know how to communicate, and that have a clear vision of what a desirable future should be all about. And because of the fact it's so important that we communicate with the young generation, I think it's a good step to do that together with all the faculty and all the networks that we have built in the last year.
I can maybe just add to that. I was yesterday yesterday and the day before in a talk with students from Climate Kick. So the European Commission has this climate initiative, and they have been 400 people from Europe on a climate journey the last couple of weeks. And so these were like 2 final days, and they had to work on their own idea and basically their own kind of maybe project, startup. And were really some cool ideas. And I think they basically, I mean, they don't have no heritage, no legacy, no 100 or 20,000 people they have to consider. So I think we have to really look also what are some of the awesome ideas already from the young generation, from the people who are on the street already, who are on, in universities and saying, hey, why not? Why can we not do this and this? There was a really brilliant idea about solar panels and thinking through this from universities in Holland or other places. So I think we might just also skip some of the innovation which happens in startups, which maybe the last 20 years have been focusing on e-commerce and basically being part of this whole, let's say, logistics, Amazon, buy 5 things, return 6, I don't know what culture. So maybe we should just kind of leapfrog ahead and just look at much more closely to what is the next generation really thinking about, some of those ideas. And I think the combination with the new university is really a brilliant step, because there you can, steer some of the inspiration, including then say, okay, how can we mentor and help some of these groups to then maybe become also successful startups and, zebras instead of unicorns, or new kind of companies, which we all need.
Yeah, Harald, and this is the reason why this is not only going to be a university, but it's also going to be an incubator for new and green tech ideas. So, I mean, we have a very vivid seed investment scenery here in Austria, and we bring that know-how to Berlin if we don't find it there anyway. So we will also train young people for what I mentioned beforehand, and we will take care of their ideas and provide them with know-how and money for to get started in this new era of business.
Yeah.
I like that.
I mean, just because the words like training and educating and the masterclass, from my perspective, it's about toolkits. It's about finding the right methods, methodologies, tools, processes that are the most relevant and the most promising to whatever need you have. And if I have to sort thoughts again, from my personal perspective, first step for anyone, whether you're someone young or a corporate or first step is like to acknowledge change, just to reflect on what's happening in your industry. If I stay within a corporate context, to be fully aware of this, exponential change that is happening. I mean, as you can tell from my funny German accent, I mean, I'm German, so I'm the automotive industry is close to my heart, and it's painful to see what this industry is currently challenging. And I could talk about an hour about that. I mean, you all know it there. Around the electrification. I mean, California this week, 3 days ago, California said 2035, no more petrol and diesel engine. I mean, that's California. I think it's the second largest state in terms of car boards in Americas, car sales. I mean, that is massive. You have the competition, Tesla, etc., etc. So step number one, whatever industry you are, whether it's automotive, whether it's pharmaceutical, whether it's consumer goods, whether it's retail, be aware of the change. I mean, what's happening, the exponential stuff. And the pandemic, Corona, for me, it's almost like a spotlight. It's like a radar, like, watch out. How about your e-commerce strategy? What's happening with social media? How about your trend management? How about your innovation lab? How about remote work? Have you been prepared? I mean, is your IT infrastructure, is it modern? Are you using Microsoft Teams or Slack, or is it still whatever? So step number one, be ready there, be aware. And then step number two, it's really about, the right tools for the right question. So, all of us at the faculty, we strongly believe in these 3 horizons, like, the Google incremental, adjacent, and then the moonshots, and also about like, if it's really about, let's start really quick with horizon 1. If it's around the incremental innovation, like, hey, I'm in retail, I have to improve my retail business, then to do design thinking, to do a co-creation workshop, to do a customer journey mapping, awesome tools. Those tools are available. We use them as a faculty. We do that all the time, these sorts of workshops. That's the perfect methodology to improve immediately. Like, on Monday, you start a design sprint, and next week, after 5 days of design sprinting, you can implement some innovation around retail right away, and you will notice something awesome. The second horizon with the adjacent business, like, great stuff around co-creation. I mean, we strongly believe in co-creation, cross-pollinating, that, for instance, we bring together different industries. I mean, I know that all of us, like Harald, myself, Gerhard, we are missing so much the H Farm, the Le Camp experiences, because it's not only about those locations. It's about having a conversation at a table with someone from, Red Bull, Volkswagen, whatever kind of background in industries, cross-pollinating, discussing, co-creating, and beautiful ideas emerge. And those are adjacent. Usually they are adjacent ideas, new business models, great. Finally, third horizon, and that's what the masterclass is all about. But how about like really coming to radical new ideas, bold moves? I mean, what is a future behind selling a car if you're an automotive? What is a future behind physical retail if you're, like a large department store? What's your future? What is the future behind the shoe if you're Adidas, or, if you're whatever kind of producing? And therefore, the masterclass and the methodology Moonshot is awesome, because it's It's a framework that helps you to leave operational stuff behind. I mean, it's not about, damn, we don't have enough resources. Oh, that costs a lot. And oh, I only have 5 coders. I wish I would have more. Leave that behind. Start with like really thinking about a desirable future. And a desirable future for us always has to do something with SDGs, with sustainability, with social impact, with societies, with stakeholders. Describe that future and then use a framework, use a methodology to have like a very clear vision, a very clear idea what you want to achieve, and then move backwards. If that is the future that I want to have, how can I get there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And how timely, I think, with the moonshots, we maybe also yesterday that Daniel Ek from Spotify announced that he will donate or invest €1 billion into European moonshots. So he said, I think, moonshot projects and €1 billion over the course of the next 10 years. But this is the time. First of all, there's something about this, audacious thinking, more money and bigger ideas, which are in that third horizon, which we don't know about so much. Spotify 10 years ago or something, nobody thought really that this is such a big success, especially for the founders and the company. Now we have to also maybe put some more money to the artists, but that's another discussion. But also, I think if we zoom out a little bit, we look at the European Union, and also starting next year in 100 days is Christmas. So next year it's in 111 days. We're talking the next year starting. And this next decade of European funding is called Horizon Europe. And we'll have, more than 100 billion euros in funding for R&D, but it's no longer just saying, here's 1 billion for AI and 2 for quantum and 5 for this. It's actually taking a big shift and saying, can we do, and they use the words purpose-driven missions. So can we induce purpose-driven missions, which one of them, coming back to sustainability, for example, could be, how can we fund to achieve 100 climate neutral cities in Europe by the end of 2030? And that goal is not defined by a technology, it's actually defined by the goal. So that's a moonshot. It's like, you don't know where we land, but that is the goal. We want to land on that planet where 100 cities already are green and sustainability. And I always say, if you use AI for it, or maybe some better, new mobility things, or a lot of green paint to make the bike lanes more secure and wider and so on, because it doesn't really say if technology even plays a role, what technology. It plays a role to really think, and then it starts also to the mayor now. She has to think all of a sudden cross-pollinating and get all her experts in how to achieve it. And it's not only the usual suspects who have been getting R&D money for the last 10 or 20 years, the big institutions. I think there's a big chance also for startups, new ideas, also academia to say, oh, wow, now let's think how we can collaborate on that and achieve this very tangible goal. And we know, most of the population will live in cities pretty soon. And so there's a big lever to change our behavior and at least one of the biggest ecosystems on this earth to change it. And I think this is a brilliant move from the EU and from Europe. And this might be, a way versus the US and China. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about that. We have something to give, not only in our European context, but from Europe in a global context. So, that's why a lot of people here in the faculty, we see, maybe some 3 white people, but there's really a great diversity, and we're striving to even add more voices to exactly, even play and live this cross-pollination.
You 3 were the fastest to respond, but there is an incredible diversity in the faculty, and I'm very excited to be one of them. So it is, I think, one of the core sort of functionalities is to know exactly which direction you're walking in. So that kind of moonshot is almost like these seeds have been planted. Whether we get there is not the point. The journey is the fun bit. It's the toolbox, like Max was talking about. It was the kind of open view, but given the tasks of today, California's had some of the worst fires that they've ever had before. And that has led to an appreciation for what's really happening. So yes, we can sort of take cues from what's happening outside in our environments, but we can equally begin to be prepared. And I think that we don't need to have a fire at our doorstep to be ready for what's happening right now. We can be ready. We can take these courses. We can take, we can ask these questions. We can explore all sorts of different critical ways to almost learn to unlearn, like, the sort of new leadership or the future scenarios that are coming up, the sort of widening of our lens to understand what kind of skills do we need? What kind of tools do we need? What kind of frameworks for executives or anything for decision making in companies and in organizations of the future, and in structures that don't even exist yet, in companies formations that we haven't even thought up yet. Still we're looking in terms of the corporeal aspects, right? The corporation being the body, but perhaps we're going to move away from that kind of, structure. So I think that there is going to be a huge amount for a future that we ourselves, coming back to what we were talking about before, maybe we're the ones who actually do plant the seeds for the future. Perhaps we are the ones that decide, what is going to be the 2035, new regulation that we're going to bring in. And then subsequently we all move around that to sort of invite that, right?
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
First of all, I think we have really one challenge in front of us, namely that we have to dive deep into these fields of new technology. The only way to create this kind of future is to really understand what the new options are all about. So nobody could have been able to create, Max, you mentioned that iPhone, without a deep understanding of what is inside it and how to use it. And now upcoming technologies, we have the same situation. We have to understand what it's all about, and then we are in a position to recombine new options and create a framework of opportunities that will enable us to go into this next kind of industrial production. And what Harald said is obviously true. There's a lot of money out there, and basically at first hand it's stupid money. It's our task to turn it into smart money, and the only possibility to do so is just to be able to talk substantially about the things that are around us.
I can sorry, Max. Yeah.
No, go ahead if you.
I just wanted to add just something about the timeline, and you just said something which struck me and say maybe we are the people who have to, change something about how do we live in 2035. I think it cannot be a maybe. It has to be us. It has to be all of us, not only us four. It has to be everybody watching. Everybody, everybody is a futurist, because in your decision whether you buy this butter or this milk or this oat milk or whatever you do as a consumer, as a citizen, as a parent, as a person in a corporate, was your decision where you have either your attention or your action. We all are creating this, and I think the biggest thing, which for me is the most striking, if we don't do anything, especially for climate, for example, in 2100 we might lead to be in a 4-degree environment. That's obviously devastating. 4 degrees means not like, oh, it's a little bit more crispy and it's a little bit less rainy in London. It actually means that everything south of Paris and south of the Alps is going to be part of the Sahara. In 80 years from now, it's not 2100 like, oh, Star Trek, and it's like the next generation and the next generation of the Jedi, people or something. 80 years from now is if my kids are 22 and 25. My grandma, luckily for her, she became 102. So my kids will be alive in 80 years from now. I might not be, more or less. So it's not if or what or who has to do it. We have to do it, because it's no longer some people we don't know. It's actually our kids and our grandkids will ask us, Daddy or Grandpa, what did you do to change it or not? And I think most people, I had a conversation yesterday, very good, enlightening. But at one point it was like, yeah, Moonshot's crazy. Yeah, sure, I heard about it. Like it's the next 10 years, but well, I have to do this now for the next 2 months. Yes, I understand. But no, you don't understand, because whatever we do in the next 2 months, or the next 2 years, is the one lever to either have a chance to go from either 4 degrees or to 1 degree, or to change not only the climate SDG, but poverty and all the other things we have to address. It's like JFK said, all the other things. There's not only the one thing to the moon. It's early. I mean, we're changing system thinking. There's a brilliant talk from Mark Buckley in the faculty, and all the different aspects I have to also address. There's like 12 faculty members who are giving a talk about 45 minutes or an hour of content, which like blows your mind from different perspectives, from purpose to system understanding, technology, and corporate strategy. And I think we need to tune in and get the sense of urgency. It's no longer 5 to 12. It's 5 after 12. Because if we don't do anything, it's just boiling. We're just already the frog which is boiling, and we have to jump out of this and get this outside view and say, oh, shit, we are really here. We have to do it. And that's why I'm so excited that we put all these brilliant people together and the different aspects to say, well, okay, if this is happening and I get this sense of time, this is actually what Alex, the futurist for Daimler, is talking about. The whole thing is all about timing, and how do we can get this sense of time as a futurist. It's fundamental. So I don't want to take too much time, but I'm so excited that it's not like maybe, it's yes, we have to do it. And that's why you have to have the tool, and some of it is just like thinking outside of any kind of boxes. It's just like go to the moon or Mars and then look from there back. It's like the Earthrise picture, get the overview effect and say, well, we are on the moon or maybe somewhere in the orbit there, but you look back at Earth and say, well, that's us. And that's the only option we have right now for a long time to, to sustain us, our families, and our next generation. We got to take care of this thing.
It's either we become architects of our futures, and I mean the plural, because there are many possible futures. There's the entire range from the kind of Terminator dystopia Black Mirror future to like living very happily together, and we have to become architects of the future. Because the one thing I learned is like, either you do something for the future, either you are actively involved in it, or it happens to you. And, to bring it back to a corporate context, I mean, this is what's currently happening to many industries. They just let it happen to them. It's, sorry for switching topics again, but like, this morning I found this old video from Elon Musk, 2009, at Letterman show. And he literally was asked, so how many cars have you sold? And Elon Musk says 1,200. And if you just take that into perspective, and most of us, when you look at economy, I mean, we're talking about 11 years, and what happened in 11 years. And the whole point where the circle closing is like, the car industry had happened to them. They have the future happen to them. Sorry for the weird English, but you know what I mean. They haven't been actively creating their futures. Tesla did it for them. They've been disrupted. And to close the circle again to what Harald said, etc. And Harald, you mentioned JFK. I mean, I can just honestly recommend everyone watch the 61 talk from him when he talks about the moonshot, because what's so powerful in his messages. And remember, 61, area of the Cold War, area before iPhone and whatever sorts of technology we have available. But there was someone describing a vision, a moonshot, saying like, hey, we will put someone on the moon and bring this person safely back. And we have to do it not because it's easy, but because it's hard. That's for me like the goosebump moment, because it actually describes, yes, that is a bold ambition. This is something in the year 61 is impossible to imagine. How should that be possible? And I mean, there are so many great books about this. NASA freaked out. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean within 10 years we have someone on the moon? Have you seen our rockets? Have you seen our satellites? I mean, you know, it's like, it was a really bold ambition. It was technically almost impossible, but because it was so hard, and read the books, it's amazing. This helped the entire nation. This helped NASA as an organization. And now, you know, to close the circle to modern days corporates, Moonshot Thinking, it helps for a corporate to really look what's necessary. What do I need to let go? I know it's a hard goal, but in order to achieve that, I need to think outside the box. Maybe I have to invite more diversity. Maybe I need to buy a startup. Maybe I need to invest in an office in Asia and in Silicon Valley. And maybe I need to hire way more female executives. Maybe I need to do this and that. Maybe I need to let go of my old school IT infrastructure and go full modern. Maybe I need to do some unpopular decisions by, for instance, saying like, okay, this department, it's not going to work. I don't want to fire this department, but I need to do something else with them. Maybe I need to let go of certain business models, etc., etc. So it is hard, but because it's hard, we are forced to do things differently. And this is not only a challenge, I see it as a big opportunity. And so, you know, Harald, Gerhard, Alex Mankowski, Diana, all these folks I can think of, Frida, Mira, Marie, etc. We've all witnessed these magic moments when you're with a client and you tackle a very ambitious goal like, how could the future of media look like in 2030? What could digital health be like in 2035? What's the future? What kind of mobility I imagine for 2040? So we've all witnessed these very ambitious questions. And the first half hour is, well, it's horrible because you're like, I don't know where this ends up to, and flying cars and autonomous. But then the magic happens. Then the cross-pollination happens. Then these little dots come together, and all of a sudden, with your Post-its, or these days when you do it virtually on Mural or whatever sort of shared environment, all of a sudden you see a vision. All of a sudden you see these patterns emerge, and all of a sudden you have the people super enthusiastic, like, yeah, this is actually what I really could imagine. Cool. And then you have this whole motivation. And then the next step is like, awesome, we found our moonshot. Now let's make it a reality. And I just want to close before I'm also taking too much time. One of the questions we often hear is like, well, but how applicable is it? I mean, if it's like 2060 Star Trek future, and if I can just 3D print a new body, and if I just upload my brain, like, you know, like upload at Amazon Prime, what does it help me in the next year's activities? And there I can honestly say, once you have this ambitious goal, I mean, then it's clearly a possible step to think about, like, yeah, what can I actually do to make this a reality? Small steps. Maybe this means I need to do X, Y, Z. Maybe it needs to make a bold investment. Maybe it needs to, lead to something very tangible that I can do next month.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Max, one of the most important things you said, besides all the important things you said, is you talked about timing. You know, we have a lot of colleagues that are, me included, we are something like experts in being too early, because we work on in the field of innovation. So I think everybody who is in fear to be too early as well needs experts that guide them along the way into this imagined future, from this imagined future to these days and the reality. And I think we have the methods in the meantime to really estimate how time frames are all about. And this is exactly what is needed for real innovation, just an idea is not enough. I think to get it on the ground means innovation, and we have to do that together. Otherwise, it will not take place.
Yeah, I mean, timing. Timing is so often the enemy of innovation. You're so right, Gerhard. And all of us have made our experiences being too early. I mean, Harald and myself done mobile advertising in when 2005.
Yeah.
That was too early. But here comes the big, here comes the big improvement. Build, measure, learn, lean startup. I mean, technology that is available, stuff that was so damn expensive 20 years ago. Why didn't we talk about moonshot thinking, design sprints 10 years ago? Why? Because it would have been way too expensive, and all of us have made these experiences like, oh yeah, it will cost 500K, $1 million to have something out in the market, and then we see, market is not there yet. It's 2020. Within 30,000 euro, you can build an MVP. You can test it. You can learn from it. You can, measure the data. You have these customer insights. You can improve. So that's why I'm more than ever excited about innovation. It is possible to have these really fast MVPs, a few weeks, valuable data, learn from it, improve it. So it's super fascinating times. Yeah. And Tia, real quick, because Tia asked, but for companies, for corporates, I mean, what are some of the required skill set? I think you called it skill set or something. It's exactly these, these kind of mentalities, these mental models. It doesn't have to be perfect. Think in MVPs, build, measure, learn. Have an agile mindset. Do decisions based on observations, not on assumptions I think the customer will do X, Y, Z. No, we are not the customer. I mean, we can talk to the customer, we can observe them, but we should never imply something on that. So there are many of these little important things that we should incorporate. Agile mindset, the MVP logic, being data centric and data specific in decisions, having from a mentality, a culture of test and learn. I try to avoid failure culture, because failure always has such a negative connotation. But then trial and error culture, where it's okay within a corporate to find the boundaries, look, we're not missing up on that part. I mean, if you're building cars, that needs to be 100% error proof and there is no room for failure. But the same company could do more agile, more MVP stuff around interfaces, around mobile apps. So where is it okay to trial and to learn? Do I have a culture that is built on diversity, on sustainability? Do I have a purpose? Good luck in finding a millennial by just saying we are to ask you about the purpose. They ask you about, hey, what do you stand for? So all these bits and pieces I think are very important when they come together.
I think the purpose one, Max, is really important. And we also have Diana Gagliard and Julia von Winterfeld from Soulworks, and together they do Exponential Human. So they have a masterclass on purpose and unlocking, leadership potential to really hone in on your own personal mission, as well as, how do you address that in, your work. And there's, Ricardo Mesquita, he's was part of the head of the immersive learning lab at the IE University in Madrid, talking about lifelong learning and some other aspects, and other people talk about similar things. And just yesterday, I was part of 2 days ago, I was actually in New York. Parentheses, I would have been in the UN headquarters for, in the inner circle during this UN General Assembly week, but, well, in another world maybe. But so there was a summit from Leaders on Purpose, which are friends of ours, and we partner with them. And they have every year like a CEO report, talking to the top 50 leaders according to a Harvard Review, selection. And I was in a room with, 24 people or 30, which including the CEO of IKEA, CEO of Unilever, CEO of Danone, and a couple of others from other parts of the world, Mahindra Group from India. And they talk about purpose, and they talk about, that the company has to serve, a whole new way in order to position itself actually for the future. You have to go dig deep in to define your purpose. And we saw that Unilever, clearly, especially with their purpose with, sustainability, and what they already started with Paul Pullman a long time ago, is now attracting more young people. As Max said, they have maybe 2,000 more people applying, we heard. And now if you're an airline, even last year, before all of this, they had 2,000 people less applying for what was once the most fancy job to, fly around the world and be a servant in the sky, or maybe even a captain. So we see there was already something shifting, and now COVID and our, the Corona crisis put just a lens on it. And now I think it's, purpose for some corporates like, oh, so fuzzy, and like, no, your top CEO, he or she already is addressing this. And the top mayors of, I don't know, Paris is doing the 15-minute city. That's leadership and saying, what is our purpose as a city for our citizens, and so on. So it reaches the top of the, of the pile. So it's no longer that you say, no, if I go to my boss, she will not really like it. No, actually be audacious and be thinking much harder about what could be your contribution to building, purpose building, companies, corporates, communities. But Tia, isn't that also what you do with Replenish Earth? Why don't you talk? I want to talk a little bit about you. What maybe your work at Replenish Earth during this time? You have been setting up this amazing TV show series. Obviously, thanks for hosting us so comfortably.
I just really love having conversations. It's so difficult for me not to do this. It's, like homing in on some really fascinating areas of expertise that people have, or showcasing that, or just bringing people and inviting them to express themselves. That expression for me gets me into flow state. So totally. So for Replenish Earth Lives, it's really an opportunity to dip into the life of another person, and then to help, others to be that sort of like fly on the wall. Sometimes I'm having such a brilliant conversation and I'm like, if only everybody else could hear this, like it's one of those moments for me to do this. Of course, as Future IO and the masterclass is going live, and I'm going to share also the masterclass sort of email address for anybody who wants to learn more about the masterclass. Please field all of your questions to this email address. One of the key things that we're working on at Replenish Earth is being future ready, and this means eco-futurism at its core. What's going to be happening in the next 5 years, and what can we do to be ready for that? One of the things that the entire team at Replenish Earth is working on, and at the moment they're all over the place, like completely and utterly global. We don't really need to have a physical location to call our home, or even an office, because we're in front of our computers. As long as we have internet, we have the ability to communicate in ways that is real time, no like 30 minutes to get somewhere. It's it's right and it's ready. So that's one of the things that I've been loving the most actually of Replenish Earth. So some of our core sort of areas are a certification program for the World Replenish Index, looking at and understanding the curriculum. Like we've got an entire team that's looking at the curriculum. We're also going through an entire branding exercise, which is really interesting because of course Replenish has its own sort of journey of where do we explore sort of like the future meets present, like the future is like all these exponential technologies, all these different ways that we can be ready. In a funny sort of way, we've gone through our own sort of masterclass and gone through the sort of processes, what kind of technologies are important right now, so that we can be ready. We can be, like you mentioned, Max, and also Gerhard, what are the different questions that we can ask as an organization? What kind of products and services are we going to be not selling? Like it's okay. It's so easy to do all of the, hey, we're just going to do another plastic, system that's to go into the DNA of the products and the services that we align with is so hard. And it's hard, and we want to share that. Our journey is, one that we can actually educate other people about, because it's been really difficult to think in terms of what are we going to be selling when we don't want to be selling anything. We don't want to be sending anything to a landfill site. We are a company that doesn't want to sell you anything. This is the strangest aspect of the work that we're doing, because in order for us to sell you something, we want to incorporate products and services that have, you know, replenishing the earth as a forethought, not as an afterthought. This is not a CSR department. We're not a CSR department. You know, we're not thinking in terms of like, hey, look, do this, and then, oh bugger, we should have done something better about that. So I'll leave it on that note. It's been an absolute pleasure to have the faculty of the Futur IO, and I'm like, there are more, everybody out there. You'll find out more about the masterclass either from the actual website, and or if you have any further questions, please do send them into the masterclass at future.io.
Thank you, Tia.
It's been a pleasure,
Thank you, Tia.
Harold, Max. And I very much hope that everybody will have the opportunity to come in and to participate in what will be a very, very exciting edition, this year's edition, October 8th, 5th, is it? That people need to get there, the 5th. To get the applications in, the deadline is coming up close. If you're interested, please jump in, because that's what I'm doing. An absolute pleasure. Thank you all very, very much, and see you all soon. Bye.